Chris McGrew with TTG Equipment, Service Manager at the Logansport, Indiana location. Today we're going to talk about a 2016 S680. What we're going to cover today is just a couple general maintenance items, maybe a couple field settings, some things that maybe we want to keep an eye on before we actually make our way to the field and to make sure we don't run into any problems on our first day out. What we're going to cover will also kind of end up encompassing a larger range of machines as well, but this is particularly going to be more of your 5-speed feeder house pro drive transmission machine. Making our way back over here to our active tailings elevator. Basically all we got is we got a cross auger coming over on the bottom side, hitting an elevator chain, which brings it up and dumps it into a cylinder. That cylinder has what appears to be like some mini feed accelerator plates, and then out here on this outside edge of this drum housing is a little mini rasp bar, similar to what we'd see in like a Walker style combine for threshing and separation. You've got two settings here. You've got a corn icon and you've got a wheat icon down here at the bottom. For this active tailing system, you want it set corn and soybeans on the corn setting and wheat on the wheat setting. That's basically how it works. So you'll leave it corn most of the time unless you actually are harvesting wheat or rye or anything like that. Make our way just directly in front of that. You got your clean grain elevator. Again, just another cross auger. You got an elevator chain carrying it all the way up to your charge housing in the grain tank, where that hits your load auger and actually throws it up into the center of the grain tank there. You got a speed sensor located on the left-hand side of this guy. The only thing we really want to make sure of that we're keeping an eye on is making sure that the lower sprocket here doesn't get. The elevator drives from the top, and this is basically driving the cross auger itself. So these sprockets will get hooked as everything starts to wear. If they get hooked too much, you can actually start seeing that chain start to slip on the sprocket itself. So we want to keep an eye on our upper and lower sprockets. Your upper is typically going to wear out significantly faster since that's where it's driving from, and then it's transferring that energy through that elevator chain down here to this lower auger. Next thing we want to talk about is our moisture sensor here located on the side of the clean grade elevator. We want to do a good job of cleaning that guy out. This is a new style compared to what you had with your 70 series machines, which were located in the grain tank. These seem to be significantly more reliable. But again, pull the two pins, take that bottom plate off, make sure that auger's cleaned out, make sure none of that crop material is allowed to sit in there and kind of get moldy and nasty over the winter. Do a good job keeping them clean, and typically you won't have any issues. All right, so when we come here just forward of our clean grain elevator, and we've got the variable shivs that actually modify the speed for your cleaning fan down here. So what we've got going on here is we've got an actuator on that arm, and with this upper variable shiv setup, we've got 3 dowels on the outer shiv that slide into the inner shiv, and as you're increasing and decreasing that speed, those dowels are sliding in and out, keeping those shivs mated together. Now what can happen as you run that thing at a certain speed range for a long enough time, you'll start to get steps worn in those dowels, so then you'll go to increase the speed, and that step will actually catch on the whole of that inner shiv and prevent you from being able to speed that guy up any. So what we want to do is make sure at least once a year we're taking that guy apart, looking at those dowels on that outer shiv, making sure we got that step kind of ground down and polished up, so that way that thing can move freely as it needs to. A good way to prevent it from happening in all reality, go ahead and adjust that cleaning fan speed at least once a day. Kind of speed it up, slow it down a couple times. Spread that load out on those dowels to prevent that step from even showing up. We want to be greasing that guy at least every day. Come down here to your cleaning fan horizontal shaft itself. Basically that's the shaft that goes all the way through your cleaning fan to the other side, and you got a bearing on each side. You want to make sure we're greasing this guy every day. You look in your operator's manual, it references doing it every 50 hours. But there's a lot of load being put on this lower bearing here. We've had multiple failures actually happen where that bearing actually goes out, all the balls fall out of it, that inner race falls back against the outer race, and it's okay for a little bit until it starts wearing enough into these flanges that fan is able to contact the cleaning fan housing. Once that happens, that thing's able to basically explode and just grenade inside there. Then you got to take a Sawzall to it, cut it all apart, and the only way to get it out is through the bottom. Very timely and costly repair, and you don't want it to happen in the middle of the season. So do yourself a favor, lay your eyes on this bearing every day, and while you're laying your eyes on it, go ahead and shoot it with some grease, and also go ahead and shoot that upper variable with some grease as well. It'll save you in the long run. Coming forward and directly above that cleaning fan area on the right hand side, you've got this intermediate drive belt set basically coming off the primary counter shaft from the left hand side, coming over to drive everything on the right hand side. These double belts here come down and hit this big, a lot of guys call it the pizza pan pulley. It's driving that intermediate unit there, which is doing your shoe augers, It's doing your feed accelerator up front. It even comes back and transitions and hits this larger jack shaft to run all your elevators as well. This double belt set here is one of those situations where we need to be rotating these out. For years it was 2 individual belts, and now they've come out with a part number that is just, again, a single belt, double ribbed. Same situation happened here. One is always constantly tighter than the other, so then what happens is it ends up getting slung off, dangling there, maybe hanging off this bracket on this shield here. You can get wadded up with another belt and start slinging around here, grab some stuff, tearing stuff apart, ripping gull-wing lights off, ripping some harnessing off out of the rear of the cab here. So cheap insurance again. Let's be taking these 2 individual belts off and updating to that single belt double rib style. Again, cheap insurance. So making our way here directly above our cleaning fan housing, we've got our shoe auger bed assembly up here. So you've got a horizontal shaft going across the front with bevel gears that drive these shoe augers. Now these shoe augers are actually what ends up taking all the free grain coming directly out of this concave system and shoving it on the front side of this pre-cleaner. So most of your free grain that lands here first hits that pre-cleaner, goes straight down, hits that cross auger for the clean grain elevator. So that you can imagine the load that's being put on these shoe augers. So these are some things that are again, they're a little kind of maintenance heavy. They got bearings on front and rear that need to be looked at and make sure we don't have any excessive play. So once a year we want to be taking these side covers off, and you can access these 2 augers from the right hand side, and there's 2 other augers on the left hand side. We just want to grab that auger, give it a shake, make sure we don't have any excessive movement, make sure there's no fore and aft movement, maybe indicating a failed bearing in the front. And then go ahead and give those augers a twist as well and see how much rotation you got out of there. And if you got maybe a 1/4 inch or so of rotation, that's good. That means you got good backlash with those bevel gears on the front side, so they're not going to be excessively noisy. But if you get you get anything over 3/8 to maybe even 1/2 inch of rotation before it actually feels contact up there on that front bevel gear, that's an indication that our bevel gear is probably wearing into each other to the point where if we start getting to some high moisture corn, we're going to run into that situation where we're going to end up wearing those guys out. And if you get one of these that fails during the season, all that happens is that corn just ends up piling up right there, not actually being pushed back onto that pre-cleaner. So you get one of these guys to stop spinning, you can imagine the capacity you start losing out of the machine. So now that we're in the grain tank here, we've got a lot of components happening. As that clean grain makes its way up that elevator chain, comes over the top of that charge housing and hits the bottom of our sump for our load auger. You got a gearbox down there with the driver on it that hooks into the bottom of your load auger. It's just going to shove all that free grain up here. So start talking about augers, we want to make sure we're doing a good job of keeping an eye on all of our flighting conditions. And this doesn't just go for a load auger, it goes for horizontal augers, it goes for cross augers, it even goes for shoe augers. Anywhere where it's excessively sharp, that's where you're going to kind of see some of that grain quality start to fall apart a little bit. So you'll notice the load augers on these things are great, big, beefy, 1/2 inch thick material, very heavy. They take a beating, it takes a lot to wear them out. Most of your horizontal augers are the same way, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch thick flighting. You get down to your shoe augers, they're maybe your 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch. But again, anything where it's starting to get sharp out there on the edge. So a guy will ask me, well, what do you consider sharp? Well, as soon as I could rub my hand on it, I'm afraid that I'm going to cut myself, or I feel like I could shave with it. If it's just kind of getting more down to an 1/8 inch point or something like that, it's still kind of dull out there on the edge, I wouldn't be afraid to go ahead and maybe run it another season. But as soon as you kind of start getting that good, sharp, crisp edge out there, that could potentially cut you if you were to press hard enough. That's when we want to go ahead and maybe be proactive and change that guy out, so that way you don't get that grain damage situation. All right, so we talk about our load auger and go down to the base of that thing, and you've got your load auger gear case. It gets to be kind of a weak point in the system, especially as guys are maybe putting on larger grain tank extensions, which is just forcing that gear case in this auger to just keep shoving more and more grain up here, especially in that high moisture corn situation. You got all that weight you got to contend with. So that load auger gear case, we want to be doing a good job of making sure that oil level is where it needs to be. It just takes standard 80-90. Guys ask me, okay, how often do you need to change it? Well, is it a change it, or is it just a make sure it's full situation? The moment you pull that dipstick out of there and you find that it's not full, you've already got a problem. If it's not full, that means you've got a leak. If you got a leak, that means it's going to, of course, leak while you're using it. And it's never going to go bone dry on you when it's empty. It's only going to happen when it's completely full. As soon as that thing loses all its oil, the bevel gears inside that's driving that load auger end up getting worn out. And so then now your augers stop moving. You end up smoking a clean grain elevator chain, smoking a clean grain drive belt. Makes a big mess real quick. So that guy there, we want to be very diligent about looking at every year before the season, making sure it's full of oil, make sure the oil is clean. The moment it starts getting dirty, that's an indication that we've got to seal out on one of the shafts, letting some of that trash in there, discoloring some of that oil. So if it doesn't look like good clean 80W90, chances are we got a problem. If you get any sort of metal shavings in there, you've got a problem, because again, those bevel gears are wearing into each other. You've got one driver on the top side of that load auger gear case that's engaging in the bottom of this load auger here. We want to make sure that thing's not getting worn down and thinned out. Come up above that, we come to that upper sprocket for that clean grain elevator drive chain, or that clean grain elevator paddle chain rather. That guy is basically what's driving this whole system. You got a belt coming up to left behind this charge housing shield here, driving that upper shaft, and it's turning that elevator chain, which is also turning that cross auger down there at the very bottom. So that sprocket's going to wear out faster than anything else. Again, we talked about those hooks before. We want to make sure we don't have any of those hooks forming, and that goes for your tailings elevators as well. Anytime you get a good hooked sprocket, it's going to really accelerate the wear into that chain. Start running into that. Now most guys might just want to throw a new chain in with old sprockets. Well, if you put a new chain in with old sprockets, what are you doing? You're just wearing out your new chain. So you want to be doing those in sets or pairs rather than just one component at a time. Another item we've got in here that we can make sure is good and clean, doesn't have a lot of debris, whether it be chaff, mud, whatever packed up around it, would be the mass flow sensor. That mass flow sensor is basically what's metering all that corn coming out of that clean grain elevator housing into the charge housing. There's an impact plate there, and that corn's hitting it, and it is actually what's determining, based off of your moisture correction you've got put in there, approximately how many bushels are coming into the grain tank. So when it talks about mass flow calibrations, it's basically sensing the vibration of the machine. Okay, here's the vibration of the machine empty. Okay, now here's the vibration of the machine with corn hitting that impact plate, and then you go through your 5 yield calibrations. A lot of that's being, all those algorithms or whatever, and everything that's talking to each other. It's starting and ending here. If that guy's not in good working order, and if it's not clean, or if there's debris built up on the back side of it, it's not going to give you an accurate reading. So do yourself a favor, make sure this is all cleaned out. Your older 70 series machines had a poly wear plate that went in there. Make sure there's no holes worn in that if you've got a poly wear plate style. This style here for sure is just kind of a cast plate style, so that gives you one less thing to worry about. But still something to be adamant about keeping your eyes on. A lot of guys with folding grain tank extensions talk about maybe they have the issue where, all right, I go to unload it, everything kind of starts binding up a little bit, and only opens up halfway, then it throws a code saying that my grain tank extensions aren't able to be opened. Something we may want to go ahead and look at and make sure we're doing a good job of is making sure these pillow blocks are cleaned out. A lot of that crop material will get in there, dust and just debris in general will get inside these pillow blocks on all these rock shafts and just cause a little bit of drag on the whole system as it's trying to open up. So there's 2 things you can do. You can take the pillow blocks apart, clean everything up, put it all back together. Just make sure you're doing a good job pressure washing in here in general. Try and blow some of that stuff out of there. If you're still having issues, we encourage you to go ahead and loosen all these pillow blocks and then torque the hardware down to 13 foot-pounds. It doesn't sound like a lot because it's not a lot. That's really all you need in order to make it work and hold everything together. So all the hardware on those pillow blocks is torqued to 13 foot-pounds. It allows those rock shafts to move freely. But again, do yourself a favor. Try and wash everything out after each season. Try and blow everything out after each season. Just going to do a better job for you. I hope you found this video, this 2016 S680 helpful. As always, if you guys have any questions or comments or need further assistance from any of your local dealers, please feel free to reach out to any of us. You can also find us on ttgequipment.com. My name is Chris McGrew. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.